Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Gift. In this video I'll be making this beautiful top. I'll be making use of 2 yards of Ankara fabric. I'll be drafting the pattern first before transferring it to my fabric. So I'll be working on the front pattern. So I'm going to be marking 1.5 inch on a straight line as my zipper allowance. So this top we are making, the zip is at the front, so I'll be marking it on the front pattern. Then I'm going to be drawing a straight line at the top, which is going to serve as my shoulder line. From the shoulder line, I'll start taking my vertical measurements. From my shoulder to my bust point is 10 inches. From my shoulder to my under bust is 13 inches. And from my shoulder to my waistline is 15 inches. I added 1 inch to it as my seam allowance, so it was 16 inches I marked. So on my shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2, which is 8 inches. I'm going to come down by 1 inch from that 8 inches as my shoulder slope. Then from that shoulder slope, I'm going to mark my round armhole measurement divided by 2, which is 8 inches. And I'm going to connect it to my shoulder slope. So this is my armhole line. From the zipper allowance line, I'm going to take the width of my neckline, which is 3 inches. Then I'm going to quickly label my lines, my bust point, my under bust and my waistline. From the under bust line, I'm going to go up by 1 inch. Then I'm going to connect that 3 inches that I marked as the width of my neckline to it. So the depth of my neckline is to my under bust. So you can just connect it straight to your under bust, but I went up by 1 inch for mine. It depends on how modest you want that place to be. I connected my shoulder slope to the tip of my neckline. So on this point, I'm going to mark my bust circumference divided by 4. Note that I'm taking this measurement after my zipper allowance line. Then I added 2 inches seam allowance to it. On my under bust also, I just marked my under bust measurements divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. On my waistline, I marked my waist measurements divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. So I'm going to join the actual measurements first. So I'm going to join them together first. Then I'm going to join the allowance afterwards. Now I'm going to mark the midpoint of my armhole line. I'm going to divide the armhole line into 2 by folding my tape like this. Then I'm going to go out by half an inch from that midpoint. Then I'm going to connect it to my bust measurements like this. Then I'm going to connect it up to my shoulder slope. So I'm just going to extend this zipper allowance line down so I can mark the back's waistline. So I forgot to take the measurement, so I'm going to be taking it now. So I'm going to come down by 5 inches from my waistline. So if you don't want yours to be that long, you can make it 4.5 inches or 4 inches. It depends on what you want. Then I'm going to connect it to my actual measurements on the other side of the paper. I marked my actual body measurements, then I marked the allowance at this side. So I connected this back's waistline to the actual measurement. Then I'm going to cut out the excess part of my paper like this. So I'm going to rule a straight line across that 1 inch I came up by from my under bust line. Then I'm going to cut out the neckline from the paper. After cutting the neckline, I'm going to split the paper into 2 from the new line. Now I'll be marking the dots on this part of the paper. From the zipper allowance line, I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2, which is going to give me 4 inches. So I marked the 4 inches and I'm going to extend it to the length of the paper like this. Then I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of the dot line. Then I'm going to connect them also on a straight line to the length of the paper. So I'm going to close up the dart by folding it over like this. So I'm going to fold it over like this. So if you have a masking tape or a sellotape, you should go ahead and hold it down with your tape. Right now I don't have a tape, so I'll be using my office pin to hold it down like this. After closing the dart, you can see the length is no longer the same. So I'm going to use this paper to complement the length. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pin to hold it down also. So I went ahead to use my pin to hold it down off camera. Then I'm going to trace that place that is higher like this to complement it. So I'm just going to trace it like this, then I'm going to cut out the excess part of the paper. On this part of the paper, I'm going to mark the center. So I'm going to fold my tape over into 2 equal parts and I'm going to mark the midpoint, that is the center. On the shoulder also, I'm going to mark the midpoint. I'm going to fold my tape over into 2 equal parts and I'm going to connect both points together like this. Then I'm going to split the paper open through that line. So I'm going to cut it towards the end of the paper. I'm not going to cut everything out. So I'm going to spread it on another fresh paper so I can trace this. So I've gone ahead to spread it. So I'm holding it down with my pin. So the allowance I gave at the center, the spreading is 1.5 inches. So the pleat on this top is not that much, so 1.5 inch is enough. So if you want to pleat yours more, you can increase it. So I'm going to cut out the excess part of the paper and this will be the new pattern we'll be using now. I'll be drafting the back now. I already have a straight line on the paper which is going to serve as my shoulder line. From my shoulder line to my bust point is 10 inches and from my shoulder line to my waistline is 15 inches. So I added 1 inch seam allowance to it. So I marked 16 inches. Then I'm going to rule straight lines across those dots. Then I'm going to label my lines, my shoulder line, my bust point and my waistline. On the shoulder line, I'm going to mark my shoulder measurements divided by 2, which is 8 inches. I'm going to come down by 1 inch from that 8 inches as my shoulder slope. Then from the shoulder slope, I'm going to mark my round armhole measurements divided by 2, which is 8 inches also. Then I'm going to curve the line towards the side of the paper. For the neckline, I'll be taking the width of 3 inches and the depth of 1 inch and I'm going to connect both points together like this. I'm going to connect the shoulder slope to the tip of the neckline like this. Now I'll be marking my dart. I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 on my bust point and on my waistline. So I want to extend this armhole line. This is going to be my chest line. So I want my dart to start from there. So I extended it on a straight line and I marked my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2 there. That is the 4 inches. So I'm going to connect all the dots together on a straight line. Then I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of the dart line. Then I'm going to connect it back to the dart line like this. Now I'll be marking my body measurement. I marked my bust measurement divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance on the bust point line. Then on my waistline, I'm marking my waist measurements divided by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. Then I'm going to connect the dots together like this. For my armhole, I'm going to mark the midpoint of 4 inches. Then I'm going to use this part of the curved ruler to connect it to my bust measurements on this chest line. Now I'm going to be cutting out the excess part of the paper. Now we are done with the front and the back pattern. Now I'm going to be using the pattern to cut my fabric. So you can see I've gone ahead to cut my fabric. So this is the cut part. I have two pieces for this and I went ahead to cut the lining as well. So I'm going to be using the lining to turn it like this. So I'm going to place the right side of the lining on the right side of the fabric. Then I'm going to sew the neckline area like this. I'm going to sew it by half an inch. Then I'm going to sew this side. So these are the two parts I'll be sewing on this fabric. On the other side also, I'm going to sew the neckline and the side. For this part also, I went ahead to cut my fabric, so I'm going to remove the pattern from it so you guys can see it. So I went ahead to iron this paper stay to mine. So I ironed it to the fabric and to the lining. This is not compulsory though. I'm doing this so it will add more strength to my fabric. So if you don't have to do it. So I'm going to turn the down part and the zipper allowance area. The back also I've gone ahead to cut it. So this is what I have. So I'm going to open it up so you guys can see it. So I went ahead to cut the lining for the back as well. So I'm going to place the right side of the fabric on the right side of the lining. Then I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to join the down part. I'm going to join the neckline and the two sides. So I'm going to leave the armhole area opened. So I'm done turning this cup part with the lining. After turning it over to the right side, I ironed it flat and I went ahead to run a gather stitch on the down part. You can see I've dragged the gathers already. For this part, I went ahead to close the down part and the zipper allowance area. Then I left the side and the up part open. So I'm going to attach this part of the cup to this place like this. So I'm going to mark my zipper allowance line. From the zipper allowance line, I'm going to place the center of this on it like this. I'm going to pin it to the end, so you make sure this fabric fits into that place. So I'm going to adjust my pleating to ensure it fits in. After I'm done pinning it too. So after joining the cup part to the main fabric, I'm going to turn it over to the wrong side like this so I can close it with my lining piece. So if you watch carefully, you'll see that I pinned the cup part to only the main fabric. So I'm going to turn it like this to use the lining to turn it over. So I'll arrange it properly and sew on a straight line. Then I'm going to open it up. I'm going to turn it to the right side through the side that is opened. I'm going to do the same thing for the other fabric. So for the back, I'm done turning it with the lining and I went ahead to iron it flat. Now I'm going to fold it into two equal parts so I can mark the dart. So I'm going to mark the length of the dart on the pattern, which is 7 inches. So I'll make sure the length on the fabric will be 7 inches also. So I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, which is 4 inches. Then I'm going to go up by 7 inches from that point. Then I'm going to connect both dots together on a straight line. I'm going to go out by half an inch on both sides of the dart line. Then I'm going to take the dart on the other side as well. So I'm done turning this part with the lining. You can see the rough edges is now inside. After turning it, I went ahead to iron my zipper allowance down, and this is what I have now. So I'm going to be using the zipper at the front. This zipper has a stopper at the end. I'll be cutting the sleeves with this fabric. My fabric is already folded into 4 because I'll be cutting the two sleeves together. The length of this fabric is 26 inches. From the top of the fabric, I'm going to be marking 4 inches. I divided my bust measurement by 12. That is how I got this by 12. Then I added half an inch to it. That is how I got the 4 inches. From the center of the fabric at the top, I'm going to go out by 2 inches. Then on this line, I'm going to mark by bust measurements divide my round armhole measurements divided by 2 plus 1 inch seam allowance. Then I'm going to connect it to that 2 inches. Then I'm just going to use my free hand to connect this down. Then I'm going to cut out the excess parts. So the width on this fabric on fold is 11 inches. So I just notched the center of the sleeves. Then I'm going to open it up like this. So I'm going to make a channel at the down part for an elastic band to pass through. I'll be using a small elastic band. So I'm done adding the zipper to the front, and this is what I have. Now I'm done taking the dart for the back and I went ahead to iron it flat. So I'm going to be joining the shoulder of the front and the back together. So I'm going to arrange them on each other properly. Then I'm going to sew the shoulders together by half an inch. After joining the shoulders, I went ahead to join the sleeves to it. So this is what I presently have. Now I'm going to close up the sides of the fabric. So I'm going to use my pin to pin them down properly so it will not move and it will be well arranged. Then I'm going to use my body measurement to close up the sides. On this point, I'm going to mark my bust measurement divided by 2. I'm going to mark it down. I'm going to check if it's up to my armhole measurements divided by 2. If it's not up to, adjust your so your clothes will fit properly. So I'm going to connect this part. I'm going to mark my under bust measurements divided by 2. Then I'm going to mark it. Then the down part, I'm going to mark my waist measurement divided by 2 and connect it down. So you make sure the side for the back and the side for the front, you make sure they are equal and one will not surpass the other. Like how mine is looking, I'm going to trim it off, but ensure yours they are equal so you will not have any issue. So for the sleeves area, I'm going to sew it in a little like this. So I'm going to connect it from my armhole like this. Then I'm going to sew it a little towards the end. So I'm going to make a channel for this elastic band to pass through. I'm going to do the same thing for the other sleeves. I'm done closing up the sides of the top and I added elastic band to the sleeves, and this is the finished look of the top. So with this we have come to the end of this tutorial. Bye guys, I'll see you in my next tutorial.